Hello everyone and welcome to tutorial number 30 in a series of video tutorials for Java programming. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button and click on the bell icon as well to stay up to date with every tutorial I upload on my channel. In the last tutorial, I discussed about packages and interfaces. So I discussed about how you can create the package, how to import that particular package, and how to create an interface and how to implement that particular interface, and how you can partially or incomplete implementation of a particular interface. So two concepts were left out in that particular tutorial. So in this tutorial, we are going to be talking about nested interfaces. After that, we are going to be talking about extending interface. Then after that, if we have time, we will be starting the new concept which is known as exceptions. So let's get started. As I said earlier, in the previous tutorials, when I used the PPT, I told you that nested interfaces are nothing but when an interface contains another interface. So I'm going to create another interface here. So I'm going to create another interface here. Let us call it inner. Okay, so because it is the inner interface, and okay, so I am going to call it public. Now one thing you need to keep in mind is that this is public by default. Okay, you cannot make it private, you cannot make it as protected also. Okay, so that is not allowed. You cannot make it protected also. This is also not allowed. So the only keyword which is allowed is public. Okay, and this is by default. You don't need to write this public keyword inside here, inside this particular interface, because all whether you are defining a method, or whether you are defining a whether you're defining a variable, or whether you're defining even an interface, all of these are going to be public by default. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a method inside this. So I'm going to call it inner method, inner method. So this particular method, it is contained inside the inner interface. All right. So now, if I have to implement this particular interface, what am I supposed to do? I'm going to click on example dot inner. Okay. So it is custom dot inner actually. So now it has to implement that particular method, which is inner method. Okay. So public void inner method. Okay, so now this method has been implemented. No interface. Okay, this is implements. Okay, this is implements. So now what is going to happen is this particular method. Okay, it has been overridden here, and this particular interface, which is inside this particular custom interface, it has been implemented by this particular class. So how, what is the syntax we follow? Outer class name. Okay, outer, here we are using interface, so it is outer interface name. Okay, then after that the dot operator, then after that we have the inner interface name. Okay, this is the inner interface. So this is the outer interface, then dot, then inner interface. Then it becomes, then after that you are going to follow the regular procedure for implementing that particular method. So this particular method has been implemented here. All right. Then after that, as usual, you can call this particular method. Now there is one additional way in which you can define interface, and that interface, I'm going to create it right now. So first of all, I'm just going to show you that I'm going to create a system.out.println statement, inner method executed. Okay, so inner method executed, and then after that I'm going to create object of that inner interface, custom dot inner in equals to new tutorial. Okay, so the logic is going to remain almost the same as I said in one of my previous tutorials also. First of all, interface name, then after that this is the reference, obviously reference name, then after that it is going to point to the object of the subclass. Okay, then after that in dot inner method. So this is going to call this particular method, and it is going to show inner method executed. So let's do that. So it's going to print this particular statement inside the output. So, and it is shown that particular output. All right. So now what I'm going to do, there are two ways of creating nested interfaces. The first way is to define an interface within another interface, and the second way is to do, define a nested interface is to define the particular interface inside a class. Okay, so let me define it here. Okay, so I'm going to remove this implements keyword now, and I'm going to remove this abstract keyword also. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to define this particular class here, interface, sorry, not class. So I'm going to define it as private interface. Let me see what happens if I define it as private. Okay, so private interface, let us call it as, let us say, okay, I cannot define it as custom. So um, inner uh, inner example, let us call it as inner example. Okay, now what have you noticed here? When I try to define this particular interface as private or protected, the compiler started complaining. It did not allow me to do it. But however, if I try to create this particular interface as private, it is working. Okay, then you will be wondering, how will I use a private interface? It is very simple. You can create a class, you can create an inner class here if it is necessary. You can create an inner class here, and you can name it as inner class. Okay, and that inner class, it is going to extend this particular interface, inner example, not extend, obviously implements. It is going to implement inner example. So that is the way to do it. Okay, so even if you create interface as private, that is allowed in a class, because you can create another inner class inside this particular class, and you can implement that particular interface using that. Okay, because obviously when the this class definition ends, okay, then this inner example, it becomes void, it becomes nothing, because the scope of this particular interface is only within this particular class. As soon as the compiler or the program encounters this particular symbol, which is for the class, okay, it is going to remove this particular interface. It is no longer going to remain in scope. Okay, so we already discussed about these concepts. So that is why you can make this class as private. Okay, interface as private. So that is why it is allowed, but here it is not allowed, because the reason why it is not allowed is because here you cannot create a class. That is not allowed. You cannot create a class here. Okay, so that is not allowed. Let us see what happens. It's not allowed, I think. Actually it is allowed, but it is allowed, you can create a class inside it, but I think it would, yeah, it is allowed actually. So I have not explored it earlier, but now I explore it. So this is how you're going to learn the things. You should always explore new and new things. Okay, if you don't know about something, then try to explore it. Like right now, I have learned that you can define a class within an interface. I never tried it out earlier, but now I tried it out just for I expected an error, but however it is not giving any errors, so that means this is also valid. All right, so now I'm talking about nested interface, so let us talk about nested interface. So now here let us create one method here, void display. Let us create something like that. Okay, then obviously now remember one thing, this display has capital D, this display has small d. Okay, so this display, it is not going to clash with this display. Always remember that thing. So public class inner Okay, it is going to extend from, not extend, implements, because it is implementing an interface, right? So inner example. So implements that particular inner example, then after that public void display. Okay, so now you can see that it is not giving any errors, and moreover we are implementing this particular method inside another class, so it is not going to create any error anyway. So okay, this is only going to cause recursion. System dot out dot println. Okay, display method of inner class. I'm going to call it inner interface because actually this method, this display method, it is present in this particular class. So interface. So because of that reason, I'm going to call it like that. And inside example, I'm going to call this particular method. So how to do that? Inner example. Okay, in equals to new inner. Okay, in dot display. So basically, I am calling this method. Okay. Now, obviously, this thing is not going to get executed automatically. I need to call that particular method here. So I am going to do that by using new example. Okay. So by doing that, what is going to happen? New example in the main method. I am calling this particular constructor. Okay. So then this constructor, it is going to call this particular function. Okay. So let's press the run button and let us see what happens. So it is calling this particular method. All right. So that is how the things are going to work. So there are two ways to create nested interfaces. One is to define an interface within another interface. That is method number one. Okay. But however, you need to remember that you can use only the public keyword inside an interface. Okay. As I said earlier, all the fields, all the methods, everything are made as public by default. Okay, so you cannot make it protected or you cannot make it as private. Okay, you can make it only as public. Okay, then but however, if I'm trying to define an interface within a class, okay, like in this example I'm showing you, I have defined the interface and I have done it within a class. Then in that situation you can mark the interface as private as well. Okay, so that is perfectly fine, that is not at all a problem. But however, if you mark that interface as private, then you need to create another class inside this uh, particular class, outer class. Then inside that particular class you need to implement that interface, okay, like I have done here, and then you can call it. All right. So these are the two ways to create these are the two ways to create nested interfaces. So the next concept which I'm going to be talking about is extend an interface. Okay, so let's start that. So this is the, I'm going to remove the nested interfaces now. Okay, so and I'm going to remove the nested interfaces here inside this also. So let's do that. So I have removed all the nested interfaces. So now I'm going to talk about extending interface. Okay, I'm going to remove this as well because it is creating an error. Okay, all right. So now what I'm going to do is very simple. I'm going to create one additional, you know let us say I'm going to create one additional interface here. New Java class interface. Okay, and I'm going to call this class as I don't know what to call it. Let us say tutor. Okay, let us call it as package itself. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this particular method from here, and Here I am going to type one additional method called as void update. Okay, then I am going to create one additional method here is uh, is sealed or something like that. Okay, so these are the two methods which I am defining inside this particular package. Okay, you can give whatever name you want to give to the methods. That is totally up to you. Okay, for demonstration purposes, I am just writing method names like this. Okay, but however, it is recommended to write method names properly. Like for example, if you're trying to calculate, we are trying to find out whether it is a number is even or odd, and for that if you're trying to create a separate function, then you can name the function as even or odd, something like that. Okay, so that is the easy way of doing that, but however here I am using for demonstration purpose. So because of that reason, I am using whatever name I want to use. Okay, because anyway, I am not showing you the entire functionality. I am just showing you the main concept of how the things are working. Okay, now I am going to create one additional interface. Okay, you will know why I'm doing that right now. Okay, so this is I'm going to call this interface as derived, and there is a reason why I'm doing that. Okay, this particular interface derived, it is going to extend from both custom as well as package. Okay, it is going to extend from custom as well as package. Okay, so now what is going to happen is indirectly this particular derived interface, it has it has both this thing also variable, it has the start method also. Okay, and it has update method also and is sealed method. Everything is automatically going to get defined inside this. Okay, and one another thing which you need to remember is this multiple inheritance means from deriving from more than one interface or more than one class. Okay, this thing is allowed only in an interface. Only an interface can extend, or only an interface can derive from more than one interface. Okay, this thing is not allowed in a class. For example, okay, let us say that I am trying to extend from let us say object. Okay, okay, this thing is perfectly fine, but actually this thing is implicit. Here you can see it is explicitly extending java.lang.object. It is giving a warning, and it is another thing it is showing is remove redundant extends object, because as I said earlier, all classes in Java, they are going to implicitly derive from the object class. Okay, so there is no need to explicitly extend from object, but this is just for demonstration purposes. Then after that I am going to extend from exception as well. So now what is it? Is going to give an error. Class cannot extend multiple classes. Okay. So this is just to demonstrate that concept that Java does not support multiple inheritance. A class in Java can derive from only and exactly one class. Okay. But however, this thing does not apply for interfaces. It can extend from more than one interface. Okay. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to implement this particular interface here. Okay. So implements derived. Now I need to implement all the methods. Okay. I need to implement this method as well. I need to implement this method as well, and I need to implement the other method also, which is defined in the uh, this particular custom interface. Public, okay, public void update, then public void is sealed, then it is still giving an error. Why? It must implement abstract method start. Okay, so what we have seen here is very simple, that whenever an interface is extending from another interface or more than one interface, because that is perfectly fine in Java. Okay, what we have seen is this particular interface. Okay, it is as good as writing this thing. Let me show you. Let me remove this particular extends package, extends keyword. Okay, it is as good as writing these three things: void update, void start, and void is sealed. It is as good as writing this thing: void update. Okay, okay. uh, Void update, void is sealed, and after that void, what was the other one? What was the other method name? Start. Okay. So whenever you are implementing from that particular, whenever you are extending, not implementing, because the interface can only extend another interface. So whenever you are extending from another package, another interface, it is as good as writing this thing. Okay. So it is as good as writing this thing. So, you can remove this thing also, obviously, and it is going to remain the same. Okay. But if you are, what I meant was, whenever, if you write that particular keyword extend package and custom, it is as good as writing these three methods here. Okay. But if you don't want to, write these three methods, what you can do is you can simply extend this, write this particular keyword, and you can simply remove the methods here, and it is as good as writing that particular three methods. Okay, and you can see here that this is implementing method in package. Okay, now you remember one thing. uh, yeah, this is implementing method in package only. Now remember one thing, I am implementing from derived only, I am not implementing package. But directly, indirectly I'm implementing package, indirectly I'm implementing the custom interface. So if I hover over this, it is showing implementing method in package. If I'm hovering here, it is showing implemented method in package. And if I'm hovering here, it is showing implement method in custom. Okay, even though I am implementing only derived, but indirectly this derived interface, it is extending from both package and custom. So all the methods, whichever are defined in these two interfaces, they will come into this particular interface. And if I'm implementing this particular interface, I need to implement all the methods, okay, which are defined in the super interface. Okay, package and custom. So that is the concept of super interface. All right. So this is the concept. Obviously, you can write system.out.println. You can write the logic, whatever you want to write inside this, and after that you can call the method here. Okay. Now let me show you one simple, one another thing before closing this tutorial. Derived d equals to new tutorial. Okay. D dot e sealed. Okay. D dot e sealed. Then after that d dot update, then d dot let us start. Okay, now remember one thing, this is the reference of the derived class or derived interface of actually. So this is the reference of the derived interface, and you can see here the derived interface. I have written absolutely nothing inside this derived interface, but here I'm able to access is sealed. Here I'm able to access update and start, because this derived interface, it is extending from package and custom interfaces. So because of that reason, all these methods are accessible. All right. So that is how an interface can extend another interface. Okay. So I think in this tutorial, I will be leave it at here, because already I have crossed more than 20 minutes. So I will leave it at here. In the next tutorial, we start with a new concept, which is the concept of exceptions. All right, and after that, we will be going with the remaining concepts, like we have the concept of threads and all other things. So if you have any kind of questions or any kind of doubts for this particular tutorial, then don't hesitate and forget to post in the comment section below, and I will get back to you when I can. And if you liked this particular tutorial, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. and I will see you in the next tutorial. So till then, bye.